Hello, it's week 16 of our chronological Bible reading of year 2019. Today I want to share with you from 2 Samuel chapter 11 through 18 and 1 Chronicle chapter 20 and some Psalms. 2 Samuel chapter 11 is a very famous chapter about the relationship between King David and Bathsheba. Let us just guess when this happened. King David's age is about 50, and maybe Bathsheba is about 20. And when we read the first verse, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged the Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. David remained in Jerusalem, and the Israelites already destroyed the Ammonites and besieged the Rabbah. And verse 2, one evening David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, like naked and bathing. Looked even more beautiful. And David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So, because Uriah is Hittite, even Israelite is not a pure only Israelite nation. It's like a multi-racial nation. So, when God chose some people, He has become God's people. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him and he slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanness. Then she went back home. So many people think Bathsheba made this sin on purpose to entice David, like David is kind of a victim, but we don't know. We don't know the exact story, so we cannot make go further than the revelation. And verse 5, the woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." So first response of David is to bring Uriah from the battlefield and let him sleep with his wife. But Uriah, we are not sure he knew already the relationship between David and Bathsheba. He refused to go to his own home to lay with his wife. He just slept in the guards at the palace, and David asked him why you didn't go your home, and the answer is in verse 11. Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open fields. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As sure as you live, I will not do such a thing." And second plan of David is to kill Uriah by the hands of Ammonites. So verse 14 says, in the morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. So when we think about David, David is so pure when he is close to God, and David is so evil when he doing something evil thing. So when we read Matthew chapter 16, when Peter confessed Jesus as Christ and Son of God, Jesus told him, "You are blessed." And this is not by the human and any flesh, but by the Father in heaven. But when Jesus revealed, I'm gonna go to Jerusalem and I'm going to be killed there, and Peter rebuked him. He said he called him Satan. So Peter, as Peter become the so blessed man and so like the Satan, David same. He's so close to God, so God blessed him. I will build your home and your dynasty forever. But when David get this evil thing, he already get like cursed forever. So David killed at the battlefield. And verse 26, when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. And then God sent the prophet Nathan to David. We must think that why God did not send Nathan before everything happened? Why did not God make stop Adam and Adam and Eve when they before they ate the fruits of the evil and good and evil? Because God already knew our heart, so the evil thing is our just like outcome of our inside heart. So Nathan told to David from verse 7, then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you the house of Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites." Yeah, that's very clear. And now therefore the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. This is what the Lord says, out of your own household I'm going to bring calamity from you. Before your very eyes I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you. that's Absalom, and he will lie with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in a secret, but I will do it to this thing in broad daylight before all Israel. Then Israel said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die, but because by doing this you have made the enemies of the Lord show utter contempt, the son born to you will die. And when the baby was sick, David got be sad and fasted, but finally the son died in the seventh day, and he found and he explained why he could eat again. Verse 22, he answered, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. And Solomon was born, but we know that Solomon was the fourth child of David and Bathsheba. And finally, Joab besieged the Ammonite capital, Rabbah, but he did not get the crown for his own head. He asked David to come and get the crown. So Joab was very careful. He's not a king, so that was a good attitude for him. So when we read First Chronicles chapter 20, the same thing as happened here. So we never read about David's adultery and David's murder about Uriah from the book of Chronicles, because the author did not know about that story, not because he wanted to hide it. He just focused David and the most about the temple. So when I read the chapter 20 of Chronicles and first and second verse, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, Joab led out the armed forces. He laid waste the land of the Ammonites and went to Rabbah and besieged it, but David remained in Jerusalem. Joab attacked Rabbah and left it in ruins. David took the crown from the head of their king. Its weight was found to be a talent of gold, and it was set with precious stones, and it was placed on David's head. He took a great quantity of plunder from the city. And 2 Samuel chapter 13 about Amnon and Tamar. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became frustrated to the point of illness on account of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had a friend named Jonadab, son of Shimea, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. So we know that the order and mother's name. So first one is Amnon. Mother is Ahinoam. And second one is Gilead. mother was Abigail. And third one is Absalom. Mother was Maacah, daughter of Talmai in Geshur. So Absalom's father side was David, and mother side is from Geshur. So he has a most like a royal background. And Tamar was Absalom's sister. So I think this, at this point, Amnon already married. We must think about that. And verse 11, but when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "Don't, my brother," she said to him. "Don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you." So Tamar was very clear. Her position was very clear. But Amnon refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with the intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out." "No," she said to him, "sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me." But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, "Get this woman out of here," and barred the door after her. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing a rich ornamented robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornamented robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. Then this is King David's response. When King David heard all this, he was furious, but he did nothing. That was the problem. Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. So it already passed 2 years. 2 years later, when Absalom's shearers were in Baal Hazor near the border of Ephraim, he invited all the king's sons to come here. So during 2 years, David did nothing. There was a big problem. That's why finally Absalom killed Amnon. So Absalom killed Amnon. So we don't know about what happened to Gilead. So never said about him. So Absalom is the first after the King David. But Absalom ran away to his mother's home in Geshur. From verse 37, Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. But King David mourned for his son every day. After Absalom fled and went to Geshur, he stayed 3 years. He stayed there 3 years, and the spirit of the king longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Amnon's death. So it's already past the 5 years, 2 plus 3, 5 years. David did nothing. And so Joab knowed David's heart and let David let Absalom came back to Jerusalem. So verse 23, then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king said, he must go to his own house. He must not see my face. So Absalom went to his own house and did not see the face of the king. So the King David wanted to see Absalom, and he allowed to Absalom come back to Jerusalem, and then he denied to see his face. So this is what I understand. King David do not meet directly the problem. He just hide it. He just do not want it. He just cover it. And that's why, and then already 2 more years, so already 7 years passed. So if David and Absalom was David and Bathsheba's affair happened when David is about 50 years old. Now he is 57. So finally, Absalom called Joab in force by firing his field, and then Joab brought Absalom again to King David. And verse 33, so Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So from at least here to here, about 7 years, at least 5 years. First time he saw David saw his face, Absalom's face. And we don't know exactly when Absalom had the mind of rebellion to his father, but he acted it, he revealed his heart officially from chapter 15. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run after or run ahead of him. And he stole the people's heart from king, and he wanted to become king. So when we read verse 7, at the end of 4 years, so this is actually in Masorah text, it says 40 years. Maybe it has its own way of counting here for maybe someday, but we are not sure. So after the Masorah text, even the Septuagint and some other translation changed it into 4 years. That's why we here see at the end of 4 years. If this is 4 years, already about 10 years after Absalom killed Amnon. So he now became king by himself. And verse 12, while Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel, the Gileonite, David's counselor to come from Gilo, his hometown, and so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. That's why David fled from Jerusalem as soon as possible. He just left 10 concubines in the palace. And when we read verse 18, all his men marched past him, along with all the Kerethites and Perethites and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before him. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, why should you come along with me? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner, an exile from your homeland. I think at this time, King David tested Ittai's heart, but Ittai was so sincere to King David, so faithful to King David, so Ittai became the one of the three generals of David's army. And then King David led Zadok and Abiathar return to the Jerusalem with the ark, and then their two sons, Ahimaaz and Jonathan, become the men who send the news from Jerusalem. And one of the good things is David sent back to his name is Choi, to Absalom, like false, and give him a false advice. So David said to him from verse 33, David said to him, if you go with me, you will be a burden to me, but if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, I was your father's servant in the past, but now I will be your servant, then you can help me by frustrating Ahithophel's advice. This is one of the best things David did at this time. And Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, he is such an evil man. He make a gap in knowledge between David and Mephibosheth, and make the false statement for Mephibosheth, and saying that he is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks today the house of Israel will give me back my grandfather's kingdom. The reality is because Mephibosheth cannot walk by himself, and Ziba did not help him to ride on the mule. That's why Mephibosheth could not come with King David. So verse 4, then the king said to Ziba, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. That's so bad, man. And the other worst man is, his name is Shimei cursed David, but David's response compared with Abishai wanted to kill him, but David, he said, but the king said, verse 10, what do you and I have in common, you sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord said to me, curse David. Who can ask, why do you do this? David then said to Abishai and all his officials, my son, who is of my own flesh, is trying to take my life. How much more than this Benjamite? Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will see my distress and repay me with good for the cursing I am receiving today. So when we get cursing without any reason, it may be turned to blessing. So David met Shimei at Bahurim, and he crossed the Jordan. He went back to the Mahanaim. And Hushai came to Jerusalem, and Absalom said in verse 17, Absalom asked Hushai, is that the love you show your friend, that means David? Why didn't you go with your friend? And Hushai said to Absalom, no, the one chosen by the Lord, by these people, and by all the men of Israel, his I will be, and I will remain with him. So Hushai revoked Absalom's false mind. And Ahithophel's advice to lie with the 10 concubines for Absalom. And verse 20 said that, verse 23, chapter 16, now in those days, the advice Ahithophel gave was like that of one who inquires of God. That was how both David and Absalom regarded all the Ahithophel's advice. So Ahithophel asked 12,000 people, 12,000 men to pursue David and kill him. But Absalom wanted to listen from Hushai, and Hushai's advice is a false advice, but it look beautiful, but it actually nothing. But Absalom and his people was deceived because of God. Because of God, when we read verse 14, Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai, the Archite, is better than that of Ahithophel. For the Lord had determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom. And Hushai sent the spies, the Ahimaaz and Jonathan, and that's why David safely into the Mahanaim. And verse 23, when Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for his house in his hometown. He put his house in order and then hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. And Amasa was Absalom's commander-in-chief. And when David was in Mahanaim, the people helped him from Shobi, from Rabbah, and Makir from Lodebar, and Barzillai from Rogelim. So David has good friends there. And let us read what they brought. Verse 28, brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery, wheat, barley, flour, roasted grain, beans, and lentils, honey, curds, sheep, cheese from cow's milk, for David and his people to eat. For they said, the people have become hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert. That's good friends, comparing Shimei and these friends. An actual battle between Absalom and his army and David and his army. David's army is in three parts of Joab and Abishai and Ittai. And verse 7, there the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the casualty that day were great, 20,000 men. So Absalom, his one man's mind, but because of that, 20,000 men killed. And we know the famous story, because Absalom was so handsome man, and his we know about his hair. I missed to read chapter 14, verse 25. In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut the hair of his head, he used to cut his hair from time to time. When it became too heavy for him, he would weigh it, and its weight was 200 shekels by the royal standard. And because of that hair, when we read chapter 18, verse 9, now Absalom happened to meet David's man. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's head got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going. And Joab heard this story, this news. He got 3 javelins in his hand, and he himself killed Absalom with his 10 soldiers. And he did. Let me read verse 18. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no son to carry on the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it called Absalom's monument to this day. You know, when we read again chapter 14, verse 27, 3 sons and a daughter was born to Absalom. The daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman. So Absalom was already have 3 sons and 1 daughter, but he said, I have no son to remember my name. That means he may lost his 3 sons. That's why he made a pillar for after his name, and he put already his pillar on the King's Valley. It is very strange. He's comparatively very young man. His father is still there, but why he made his monument by himself? And when we read the left part of chapter 18 to let David know the story, Joab already know David's mindset, so he just sent Cushite man, people Ayamas, and Ayamas knew the shortcut, and he met David first time, but he did not inform the exact story. And a Cushite man told to the king, verse 32, the king asked the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom safe? The Cushite replied, maybe enemies of my lord the king, and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son." So David said, I should die instead of you. That means he knew everything happened in his kids, like Amnon's death and Absalom's death. That is a result of his sin. And this is what the historical event. And let me read some verses from this week. And Psalm 69, verse 20 from 9. I am in pain and distress. May your salvation, O God, protect me. I will praise God's name in song and glorify Him with thanksgiving. This will please the Lord more than an ox, more than a bull with its horns and hoofs. And Psalm 70, may those who seek my life be put to shame and confusion. May all who desire my ruin be turned back in distress. May those who say to me, aha, aha, turn back because of their shame. And Psalm 51, from said that for the director of music, a psalm of David, when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba, verse 10 said, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. And then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners will turn back to you. And maybe the chapter Psalm 32 is before 51, and it says in the title it says verse 3. When I kept silent, my bones always wasted away through my groaning all day long, for day and night. Your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. And Psalm 86, a prayer of David, verse 16. Turn to me and have mercy on me. Grant your strength to your servant and save the son of your maidservant. Give me a sign of your goodness, that my enemies may see it and be put to shame. For you, O Lord, have helped me and comforted me. We need the sign of His goodness, His blessing, His love. And Psalm 122 of David, he said, for the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. That means Jerusalem. And Psalm 3 is titled, when he fled from his son Absalom. And he said, verse 5, I lie down and sleep. I awake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear the tens of thousands drawn up against me on every side. So even though he fled because of Absalom, he trusted God and he sang like this. And verse, Psalm 4, verse 6, many are asking, who can show us any good? Let the light of your face shine upon us, O Lord. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when there are grain and new wine around. And Psalm 12 from David, O Lord, and the words of the Lord are flawless, like silver refined in a furnace of clay, purified 7 times. And then Psalm 13, verse 5, but I trust in your unfailing love, my heart rejoices in your salvation. So unfailing love has said that is the most important thing. We must rely on God's character. And chapter 28, Psalm 28, the Lord is the strength of his people, a fortress of salvation for his anointed one. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever. So we must rely on God. We must trust God. We cannot live even in a second without his blessing. And Psalm 55 of David, and he said, verse 16, but I call to God, and the Lord saves me. The evening, morning, and noon I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice. The Israelites, one day begins with sunset, so their one day is start with the evening, and then morning and noon. This order shows that things. And Psalm 26. But I lead a blameless life, redeem me and be merciful to me. And Psalm 40 from David, he said, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet in a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He even almost in the hand of Absalom, but he became safe because of the Lord's help. And Psalm 58 of David said, verse 4, their venom is like the venom of a snake, like that of a cobra that has stopped its ears, that will not heed to tune of the charmer, however skillful the enchanter may be. So we must be open our ears to the Lord. So when we read the Bible, when we read the words of God, we must open our ear and heart to listen to Him, and then we could change our heart. We could find out what's wrong in our hearts, and then we are going with God in from our heart, and that's why God is keep on talking with me through this Bible, and may the Holy Spirit help you and me to listen and find out the words of God and His teaching from the Bible, and we walk with Him. Thank you very much, and see you again.